Welcome to the Muñiz Legal Podcast, From Injury to Inheritance.
Welcome to the Muñiz Legal Podcast, From Injury to Inheritance with Lizzette Muñiz, founder of Muñiz Legal, dedicated to guiding you from life's toughest moments to lasting peace of mind. Born in Manhattan, raised in the Bronx, a Brooklyn resident for over 2 decades, and now a proud resident of the Hudson Valley, Lizzette serves clients across New York City and the Hudson Valley. Lizzette is a bilingual Spanish-speaking attorney who helps families obtain compensation after accidents and protect what they've worked hard to achieve throughout thoughtful estate planning. I'm Leanne Lyon, and today we're talking about what to do after a trip and fall versus a car accident in New York City, and why those two situations aren't as similar as people think. Hello, Lizzette.
Good morning, Lan.
Good morning. Lizzette, you've seen hundreds of New Yorkers deal with accidents of pretty much every kind. What is the biggest difference between a car accident and a trip and falls case?
Well, the biggest difference between a car accident and a trip and fall case is that typically when there's a car accident, the police are called, they report to the scene, and they create a report. So you already have an independently documented account of the accident. Whereas when you have a trip and fall, you don't have that independent account. So you kind of have to be your own investigator and advocate and create the evidence necessary to prove liability.
Got it. So, what is the very first thing that you want somebody to do in those first minutes after a trip and fall before they even think about calling a lawyer?
Well, in the first minutes after a trip and fall, obviously, you want to assess your injuries. Are you okay? You want to see what caused you to fall. Typically, you don't see what caused you to fall before you fell. Otherwise, you wouldn't have fell on it. So take a look at your surroundings, what caused you to fall. If you can, everybody has a cell phone in their pocket. Take a photo of any defects that may have caused you to fall. And not just a close up, but also take different angles and create some context so that you can maybe see addresses in the area of your fall, street signs, things like that.
So, beyond photos, are there any other things that people can do that make a big difference later on?
Yeah, certainly. So if you fall at a place where there is personnel, like for example, a supermarket or a store, you want to go into the store or the supermarket and file a report, let somebody know that the incident happened, see if there were any witnesses to the incident, and ask them nicely for their information in case you ever need it for potential litigation in the future.
Yeah, I think, people don't always realize how quickly evidence can disappear, such as a video that might have captured the fall, especially in stores or on sidewalks. So you're saying that they should go in right away to that property manager?
Yeah, I mean, to the extent that they're able to, sometimes you can't get up off the floor, in which case you should call an ambulance and let them help you get off the floor and make sure that you let the ambulance know what happened. But typically, if you're able to get up, you're able to talk to a store manager, you want to talk to them about the defect, you want them to create a report, you want to show them the defect, and you want to get the information of any witnesses.
So I'm just going to play devil's advocate. I mean, just any trip and fall, is that a potential for a case?
No, not every trip and fall is a potential for a case. There has to be a defect, and the property owner needs to have known or should have either knew or should have known of the defect and didn't correct it within a timely manner. Earlier, you referenced the disappearance of evidence, and it immediately brought to mind snow and ice cases. I've handled several snow and ice cases where if you don't take a photo of, a sidewalk that wasn't plowed, uh, a week from now, it could be melted and it's no longer in the condition it was at the time of your fall. So those are the types of cases where you definitely need to document evidence right away.
Oh, absolutely makes sense. I mean, that type of evidence can disappear in an hour if they throw it on some ice melt, right?
Absolutely right.
Okay, well, let's change over and talk a little bit more about car accidents. In the car accidents, insurance information is exchanged, right away. In a fall case, there's often no other driver to talk to. So, what is the right way to document who's responsible?
Yeah, that's when addresses and streets come into play. Once you get the address in front of which you fell or the cross streets, then your lawyer can do a search to see who was responsible to maintain the area of your fall. And then they'll be able to send a letter of representation to the property owner and get the insurance information.
And people may not realize property owners aren't always maybe the responsible party if they hire out somebody. Am I correct?
That's absolutely right. Not just property owners. There could be a tenant. Several property owners might rent out a property to a commercial tenant, such as a bank, in which case the bank might have been responsible to alert the property owner of any defects.
Right. Wow. Well, medical treatment also can look very different. I know when you walk into an emergency room or something, they often ask, is this a result of a work injury or is this a result of a car accident? They don't necessarily ask, is this a result of a trip and fall potential litigated case, correct?
Yes, that's absolutely true. And while car accidents usually come in New York, you usually come with no fault insurance, which covers your um, medically necessary related treatment. Uh,
Mm.
Slip and falls and trip and falls don't come with that. So typically you're using your own private insurance, or if you fall at a commercial space that offers what they call med pay, sometimes they'll have a policy where they'll offer you a certain amount of money to pay for your medical bills. That's something your lawyer can determine for you.
Oh, okay. So if people are afraid of paying it on their own, they might kind of hesitate and say, well, I'll check it out later. I'll see how bad it is tomorrow. What do you recommend in those situations?
Well, you're taking a big risk when you think that way, because if you end up having a serious injury that requires surgery in the future, you need to have that initial documentation of how the accident happened, where the accident happened. So you really do need to go to a medical facility and have them assess you right away.
So just by going in and getting checked out, even if you're not feeling pain, does that help if you do go back a couple days later with pain?
Yeah, because it gives you an opportunity to document that the incident took place, right? So you have an independent person writing down plaintiff, or sorry, they won't say plaintiff, they'll say patient tripped and fell on a defective sidewalk in front of the church. And then later on, if the church tries to say, no, that never happened, well, I went immediately after the incident and reported it to my doctor, and here's the doctor's note that says that I did.
Can we ask the healthcare provider to take photos to document it so it's not just our phone that's providing the information? Is that helpful in a case?
That's an interesting question. I've never had a doctor take photos of an injury. However, I have had relatives take pictures of injuries throughout the healing process, and that is helpful throughout a case, because sometimes bruises don't show up right away, or somebody was wearing a boot. And later on, they don't remember, what the boot looked like, or how long they had the boot on, or the different types of apparatuses that were prescribed. So, taking photos along the way does help when it comes time to litigate the case.
Can you share a story about a client who did things the right way after an accident and how those quick actions made all the difference?
Yeah, well, I do. I'm thinking of one particular client that
Mhm.
tripped and fell on a defective sidewalk.
Okay.
Um, Immediately took photos of the defect. Immediately took an ambulance to the hospital. So now we have the photos, and it wasn't just a close up. They had context. They showed the building behind the defect. Um, and we had the ambulance report that placed her at the time and place of the occurrence. And then we had the complaints of pain and injury immediately after the fall at the accident scene. And yeah, it made all the difference in that trip and fall case.
So, what are the most common causes of trip and falls?
Their defects, cracked sidewalks. I've had raised thresholds that were being held down by duct tape. I had a snow and ice case where the person took photos of the entire street, and you could see everybody else's homes were plowed except for this one home that hadn't been plowed, and an ice sheet had formed. So that
Ah,
helped a lot in that case, because it shows that they had the opportunity to clean and they failed to do so.
excellent. Well, there seems like there's a lot of differences between a trip and fall and a car accident. Anything else you want to share with us before we wrap up today?
One thing I would recommend in a trip and fall case is the importance of surveillance. I actually had a trip and fall case where the person asked for the surveillance from the store owner, where it occurred immediately following the incident. That was very helpful because people tape over their surveillance. Businesses tape over their surveillance. Sometimes it turns over every 24 hours. So even if you get a lawyer right away and they send a letter to preserve the surveillance, sometimes you won't be able to get it because it's disappeared. So to the extent that you fall in front of a store that has surveillance, and most stores do nowadays, especially in New York City, if you can get a copy of the surveillance, that could also be very helpful.
Excellent. Well, thank you for all of this great information. And that's it for today's episode of the Muñiz Legal Podcast, From Injury to Inheritance. If you'd like to learn more about attorney Lizzette Muñiz and her work at Muñiz Legal, visit muñizlegal.com. You'll find resources in English and Spanish to help you recover after an accident and protect your future through proper planning. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to leave a review, and subscribe to the show so you never miss an episode. Thanks, Lizzette.
Thanks for having me, Leanne.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.